All right, so you know me, I'm like a Samuel L. Jackson fan. Can you give me like a Sam L. Jackson quote? I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
Not one that's suitable for radio.
I think one of my favorites is, what was it? Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in H-E double hockey sticks. Yeah.
That's
Still keeping it PG.
That's a good one.
Well, we had the good fortune to get a chance to check out The Banker. And even though it wasn't starring Samuel L. Jackson, he was more of a co-star. The main star was Anthony Mackie. But we thought it was a pretty good film that deals with entrepreneurship.
Yes. Actually, it was a really good film. So I'm really excited to talk about some of the entrepreneurial themes and topics.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody get these blankety blank snakes off this blankety blank plane.
Wrong movie.
Stay tuned.
This is Mikel-Claire.
And this is Trey.
And we are the couple of entrepreneurs. We're here to share with you our journey of successes and setbacks as we enter the world of entrepreneurship now that we no longer have 9-to-5s due to the new normal of the world and the pandemic.
Join us as we race the clock to start earning money, gain consistency, and overcome self-doubts and uncertainty as we search for our voices and obtain personal and financial growth. Before we get started, I want you to know that there will be spoilers. All right, so we just got done checking out The Banker, starring Anthony Mackie and Samuel L. Jackson.
And Nia Long.
I can't forget Nia Long because she had a very important role.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we definitely have to give some props to it. It's the story of a young real estate man who finds his fame in Los Angeles and decides to up the game a little bit by buying a bank in Texas. In the 60s. Yeah, so there's definitely going to be some stuff to kind of unravel. I think it fits our narrative pretty well because it deals with entrepreneurship, what it takes in order to achieve what you want in this world of entrepreneurship.
Well, let's start with going back to the very beginning. Do you think that people are born with an entrepreneurial mindset? Because I know, like in the beginning of the movie, even as a young child, he just was trying to learn as much as he could about banking, even at the cost of spying. I call it spying on rich white bankers and trying to figure out like the best way to go about learning everything he could in that industry.
I think there are natural born entrepreneurs. There's always going to be that kid that you knew in the second grade that had the lemonade stand, or the kid that you knew in middle school that was selling pencils and Tootsie Roll Pops out of his locker. The kid that you knew in college that was selling T-shirts outside of the stadium during homecoming. There's always going to be someone in your path that you knew that always could figure out a way to make money. And I'm glad that they touched on young Bernard's early life with him listening to people giving, I guess it was stock tips or maybe just investment tips in general. And what was more amazing to me wasn't just the fact that he was listening, but looking at the complexity of some of the formulas that he was writing down to give you a good idea of where his level was at as compared to what he was perceived to be. You know, he was down there shining shoes, and then the next thing you know, you look in his notepad and you see these complex equations to help him understand what it is that these people are saying. That man was born to be an entrepreneur. With all that's happening in the world today, especially with like the Black Lives movement going on, how did you feel about the set piece of where it's taking place in the 60s? It's two totally different locations that it could be based in. There's one that's in California, and there's one that's in Texas. How did you feel about the timing of all of this?
There's obviously an extra element of difficulty in being a Black person and trying to succeed in certain industries. They touched on it a lot, talking about how, well, even having at one point his wife have to portray a cleaner or a janitor. Samuel L. Jackson having to portray himself as a driver, so I think that part shows that in that time period, it was much more difficult for people of color to be seen as educated, to be seen as entrepreneurs, to be seen as business owners. So I think in that regard, be it in California or in Texas, it's extremely difficult for people of color. But then at the same time, it seemed that in Los Angeles, they were a little more open to it, but then they still had to have a white person be their front man in order to even obtain any business. I think that it was important for that story to be told because then you can kind of see, even if you're having difficulties or obstacles, look what these people overcame. You know what I mean? These people. That sounds ridiculous. But remember, we are Black people. So I didn't mean it that way.
Who's people?
What do you think about that?
I like the dichotomy, even though the time in itself, the 60s in general, was a very turbulent time. There was still levels to it, right? You've got, on one hand, in Los Angeles, Samuel L. Jackson is running a club, owning a bunch of businesses, smoking and drinking as he pleases, fraternizing with the mayor, just being able to live his life almost on his own terms. Of course, we have to factor in the fact that they had to get a white boy to front their business. But then you up it to a whole other level when you go to Texas and you're dealing with remnants of Jim Crow that's still going around and the absolute unapologetic racism that's involved in the South. So I think the setting was great because the setting itself is almost like a character. It's the times that you have to overcome, and then there's levels to the times.
As we're listening to Trey, let's remember that he is coming from the film industry. So his level of expertise is going to be on a whole other level.
I mean, I do like film a little bit. I dabbled in film from time to time. I'm curious as to how you feel about the relationships in the movie and how important were those?
There were several relationships in the movie that I think really gave a clear picture of who Bernard was, who was there to support him and who was there on his journey with him. One in particular was that of his wife, the beautiful Nia Long. She actually had complete and utter unconditional and unwavering support for this man. I remember one scene where she was sitting at the table with her uncle, who was not a fan of Bernard and his entrepreneurial spirit and ideas. And she told him, she said, hey, I believe and support my husband. He's completely capable. And not only that, if he does need me to go to the plantation club and get a job and work and support until he can make his vision come to life, I will completely do that and help support our family. So that to me was her saying, I believe in him 150%.
Yeah, she was like the definition of ride or die. And not only that, you kind of got a little bit more understanding of her when she finally did introduce Bernard to Joe, who was played by Samuel L. Jackson. I think it's safe to assume that Nia has a type, or Nia's character, Nia Long's character, Mrs. Garrett, I think that's her name. You can tell that she has a type. She obviously selected Bernard because he was a different type of person. She saw something in him. She saw that hustler spirit. And we can almost assume that she probably saw something in Joe, who was Samuel L. Jackson's character, for the simple fact that she knew him. I'm not saying that they had a relationship or they were in love with one another, but she was attracted in some capacity, not in a relationship love kind of attraction, but just drawn to that aura of entrepreneurship or hustling. She worked for him, and they were very casual with one another. I'm assuming that she probably attracts that type. And then because of that, she knew that she could help her husband even more by introducing the two and then seeing what happens.
I don't know. I didn't take their relationship as being anything other than kind of like a joking kind of friendship type of thing. It was a big step for her to introduce him to her husband, as far as, it's hard to accept help sometimes from people, especially people that you may not typically associate with, right. Which was the case because Bernard and Joe were definitely different personalities. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I viewed that. So we're still talking about the relationships. What did you think of Bernard's relationship with his father?
I like that they showed the relationship with him and his father in the beginning. Once again, given the times, his father knew that what his son was doing was dangerous. He even hinted. He was like, just a few years ago, not too long ago, they would kill you for something like this. But I liked the fact that he didn't scold him. He looked into his notebook and saw what he was writing and then understood that his son was special. And he understood that because he's special, he might be too big for the fish pond that he's in, the environment that he's in. And I'm not sure if he was the one that said you should go to California, but he did let his son know that Texas just might not be for you. Mm-hmm. He at least planted the seed that you may have to leave home in order to achieve what you wanted to achieve. Mm-hmm. And he said that he was proud of his son. Later on, when he gets back and his son is a success and he comes back home and he looked him in his eyes and was like, man, you did it. And you came back home. That relationship is really important. There are a lot of individuals who may not have the strongest relationship with their father. I have a very strong relationship with my father, and it carries a tremendous amount of weight. So to show a positive black father on cinema, to me, it always touches me a little bit. And I'm glad that they showed that he wasn't just some evil guy, where that is oftentimes portrayed with fathers on screen. It was good. It was warming my heart.
Do you think that their relationship had a strong influence on Bernard being able to move forward and pursue his entrepreneurial dreams?
I believe so, because if his father was not supportive, scolded him, grounded him, took away his notepad, that could have changed his trajectory all the way around. He could have been just a shoe shine boy or never achieved to the greatness that he ends up going to. He wasn't stifled at an early age. I'm willing to bet he was encouraged. In a previous show, we talked about being black in entrepreneurship and having the choice to disclose who you are. And we saw a little bit of that in this movie. Bernard chose when he wanted to disclose when he was black, and in another instance was forced to have to hide his blackness. Based off of what we talked about in that previous show, which you should go check out, by the way, and what we saw on screen, how did you feel about that?
It's not like he could hide behind the computer. The meetings he had to go take at the bank, the meeting he had to go ask the people if he could buy their buildings. Like, he had to go face to face. You can't hide your color, if your race, your ethnicity, if you're face to face with somebody. So I think it was a little of a different situation. At one point, he had to pretend to be a janitor at the bank in order to assist the person that they had fronting their company. And that kind of ate him up, because he said, that's what he tried his hardest to avoid, was to have to work in those positions, because it's such a stereotypical thing, but very common during those times. What did you view of him having to humble himself in certain situations?
I was intrigued by it, because on one hand, he's saying that he never wants to be seen as somebody wearing that type of uniform. But then on the other, he's going out of his way to train this white boy to play golf and to fake statistics in order to buy the building that the banks were in. It's this weird thing. It's like he doesn't want to be seen as less than, but he's still willing enough to swallow his pride and not be the front man in order to buy the bank. Obviously, I see the bigger picture. He just wouldn't have been able to buy the bank if he didn't swallow his pride. And he did that. And then he had to swallow his pride again by wearing the janitor suit.
Let's talk about, in the movie, they had, obviously, Joe and Bernard became business partners.
Yep.
What happens when your business partner and you don't have the same vision with where to move forward or how to move forward? Because there was a part in the movie where they were first initially talking about Bernard wanting to buy the bank in Houston. And Joe was very candid with him, and he told him it was a bad idea, which it was. But he told him point blank, it's a bad idea. This is why. But eventually, Joe moved forward with Bernard, and they decided to buy the bank. But do you think that you could make decisions that your business partner didn't necessarily agree with and still stand your ground? Or do you think that there could be a point where you would actually split off from them? Or how do you feel about partnerships in business?
If you're just getting started, partnerships could be essential because you may not have all the skills to do everything yourself, and it can kind of go down 50-50. But then I guess once you figure out the ins and outs and how it all works, you can be Beyonce and, throw up the deuce sign to Destiny's Child and go solo.
Bayhive.
I think it's good that you have a partner that isn't a yes person, that has their own opinion and their own thoughts, because it'll give you perspective. It's impossible for you to see every angle. Somebody's going to see it in a way that you wouldn't have even seen coming, and that's going to do nothing but make you stronger. But there can be times when you just outgrow that person. You just take two totally different paths. And Bernard and Joe could have done that once they made all their millions of dollars in real estate in California. They could have easily gone their separate paths. Joe could have stayed in California, and then Bernard could have had to figure out some other new way to buy the bank in Texas. And I don't think there would have been any hard feelings. I think they had a good understanding of who the other person was. But to Joe's credit, he was in it for the adventure. To me, he seemed like that type of character. He was like the adventure of entrepreneurship, life, of just being a man. He just lived in the moment. So he just took it as a challenge and was like, okay, he went to prison for that, but they both went to prison for that.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. How'd you feel about the white boy, Matt, the guy that was the front man?
That was his name?
I guess that answers that question.
Well, they met him initially because Bernard's cousin worked with him at a plant or some kind of warehouse or something. So when we were introduced to him, he's really excited that Bernard has this beautiful car, and he's like, you must be rich or you got it made. And Bernard said, no, I'm not rich. And he said, well, to me, anyone who has a car is rich. Mm-hmm. So it kind of gave us some insight into probably a little bit of his background that he didn't come up with much. And I'll be honest with you, he was not the smartest tool in the tool shed. So
he had a good memory.
He did have a good memory, but he learned that. He was taught that. Bernard taught him those things, how to use your skills and your strengths in order to get what you want. So I don't know. I'm on the fence about him. And then at the end, spoiler alert, I just felt like he was really shady and was looking out for his own best interests. He made some very poor decisions. I just was not a fan.
Self-preservation, that was his decision. He wasn't going to jail for nobody.
He wouldn't have gone to jail anyway.
Yeah.
He was...
I don't know. They threw 50 years at him.
They threw 50 years at him so they could get Bernard and Joe.
That's true.
Yeah, they used him as leverage. He was not going to go to jail.
Oh, wow. Well, did you learn anything?
From Matt?
From the movie. Oh, my gosh. I guess I did. Got to work on my segues. Hold on. Let me change that back. Overall, what did you think of the movie?
Overall, I thought it was great. I thought Joe was my favorite character in the whole movie just because he shot straight from the hip and he was just business savvy and living life, and he's everything I want to be. He was my favorite. But I really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of good tips on how to be a good businessman, how to be a good entrepreneur, how to deal with adversity, obstacles, how to keep moving forward, how to come out on top, even if you have like major setbacks like 3 years in prison. So overall, I would definitely suggest and recommend that people go see it. Not go see it, see it.
Yeah.
What about you? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah, I loved it. I feel bad that it only had like a 2-week run in the theater. So, because of some other drama that happened that we're not going to get into, but it only got 2 weeks in the theater and then it went straight to Apple TV. And we were fortunate enough to get a chance to watch it. I think it's one of those movies that should be seen, especially by young entrepreneurs of color. We saw a really good one like a good month ago that was on Madam C.J. Walker. We'll probably do a review on that one day too as well. But I think movies like that, when it shows that type of black entrepreneurship or that type of entrepreneurship with women or just people of color, that's outside of just New Jack City. Don't get me wrong. I love seeing the gangster drug dealing, pull myself up from the bootstraps, Scarface, I'm still standing kind of movies too. I love those. But it is refreshing to see entrepreneurship from a different type of non-gangster. So I embraced it.
And Papa, I love you, but we ain't going down the cocaína route when it comes to entrepreneurship.
The cocaína?
So please get that out of your head.
I sell the puro. Come get it.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Okay, I'm sticking a pin in it.
You're sticking a pin in it?
I'm sticking a pin in it. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Couple of Entrepreneurs.
Also known as Siskel and Ebert.
If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and make it your civic duty to go tell a few other people about how amazing our show is. We talk about movies, man. We talk about entrepreneurship, how to make money, relationships, man. We got the whole shebang. Thank you for tuning in. And go ahead and throw these two fingers in the air and say, peace out.